Hi there, it's Jenna from scribblinggrace.com. Today I'm doing a Bible Journal with Me video on how I painted a deer silhouette in my Bible. So this one's a lot of fun and there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing this. I decided to create a deer silhouette on my iPad and printed it out and use that as a traceable my outline, and I'm basically just going to color in this deer for my silhouette, and then I'll paint a background, and then I'm going to go ahead and do one more layer of the deer. So you'll see me do all of this, but I have a blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/watercolor deer, and I'll put that link in the description below. And that is where you can get this little printable for free yourself. So you can just head on over there and download it for free, and you can also find all of the links to the supplies that I'm using in this video there. And also I did this page originally with acrylics, and now I decided to do watercolor. But if you want to see pictures of how the acrylic looks doing this silhouette idea, I have pictures of my acrylic page on there as well. So head on over to that blog post for all those fun things. So to go ahead and start with my page, I just trimmed off one side of my printable so that it fits right where I want my deer silhouette to be. And then I also don't have to have a separate sheet of paper to protect the page below it. So this gives me a little layer of protection on my page, and also gives me that silhouette so I can just trace it just like a coloring page. I'm just using a small round brush, and because it's a silhouette, I wanted it to be black, but I also wanted to be able to read the scripture underneath. So I decided that I was going to go with more of a gray color to make sure that it's still readable. So because black can be really dark, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to put a huge ton of dark black on my page right off the bat. So I just took a paper plate and mixed just picked up that black color and I mixed it with just water until I got the color that I wanted. So it's basically just kind of a light gray. And as I'm painting along, if I need more paint, I'll just pick up a little bit more paint and a little more water and mix that again on my plate, and then just keep going. So this is just my first layer, so I'm going to add another layer and make it a little bit darker. But it's always a good idea to start light and go darker, because it's always easier to add color than it is to take away. So I figured I'm going to start off lighter than I need, and then I can always do more layers, and I think that that's always a great tip if you're new to watercolor. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is if you paint over something with a watercolor, especially if you were to do the back side of this page, if that watercolor will bleed and smear. The thing is, with watercolor, it's great when it's wet. You can do a lot with it and you can pick up color and stuff like that, but once it dries, it's pretty permanent on there. So you're going to see I'm going to go ahead and paint and add water over this deer, and it's not going to bleed at all. It's going to stay put. So if you do a watercolor page and you're worried about painting on that backside, it should be just fine. So that's a little tip to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and add my background. So to paint my background, I wanted it to look like there's light shining behind my silhouette, behind my deer. So I decided to do some yellow. On my acrylic page, I kept it white, but since white wouldn't really show up on my page, I decided to do yellow. It kind of looks a little Harry Potter-esque, this painting here, and I love that. So to my fellow Potterheads, is a fun one to do. So basically I'm just doing a simple wash, but I'm doing it in kind of an oval shape so that it looks like that light is behind my deer. So I'm just picking up water, and I start with my lighter colors. So I started with my yellow first, and I paint over that deer just fine. So one of the reasons why I painted the deer silhouette first instead of doing the background first is because once you put on that background, it can be sometimes hard to see that silhouette behind it. And so I wanted to paint that deer first so that I can make sure that I have that deer on there and I don't have to fiddle around with tracing paper and things like that. But that's definitely another way you could go. You can definitely paint the background first and then use tracing paper to transfer that image onto the Bible page. Or you could use a pencil or a pen before you paint anything and just outline that deer directly onto your page. I didn't want any of those outline lines on my page, so that's why I did it the way that I am doing it. So I'm going to do multiple layers. Again, I'm just going to keep on working in different layers until I get the level of saturation that I wanted. So again, I just started light and then went darker because I can always add more color. I'm also trying to work quickly so that my colors, my blue and my yellow, will bleed together slightly, so they'll blend and give me a nice ombre-ish effect, I guess. So it has a little bit of green before the blue, and it ends up really pretty. So I also wanted those edges of my page to be a little bit darker than the center. So I just add water to lighten things up if I want. You can always dab up the color with a paper towel, which I did a few times. That's the easiest way to get rid of some color on the page while it's still wet. But yeah, so pretty simple background and pretty simple page. I'm going to go ahead and just dry this again. I'm using a craft heat gun to dry my page really quickly. You could also use a hairdryer. The hairdryer does blow a lot more air than a heat gun. The heat gun has a very low force of air and it gets really hot, so that's why I recommend it. But you can always use a hairdryer. Just be careful that the page doesn't fly over or fold in on itself. That could ruin your image. And if you have big pools of water and things like that, the hairdryer can end up spraying those pools around. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in my second layer on this deer of that black color. And I'll go ahead and tell you the verse that I'm working on. So the reason why I'm doing a deer is because I'm working on Psalms 42 verse 1 and 2, which says, "As a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. My soul thirsts for you, or my soul thirsts for God, for the living God." So I figured it'd be fun to paint an animal. I love animals and I love trying to paint them, but the thing is that I'm not a professional artist, and though I've learned a lot over the years, I definitely still struggle a lot with animals. So a great way to still get an animal on your page without having to worry too much about getting all their features right is just to do a silhouette, and it turns out really fun. Of course, you could also do this with other color palettes, you know, reds, pinks, whatever colors you'd like to do. There's so many different ways that you could go about this. And again, I'm just using my small round paintbrush to trace this little image of my deer, all just that one color. One of the beauties of watercolor is that you're going to get a little different tones here and there within that deer, but I think it looks really pretty. You could also always go darker with the deer. Again, I just wanted to make sure that I'd still be able to read that scripture. To do that background, I used a large flat paintbrush. I believe it was a 1/2-inch flat paintbrush. I just use cheapo paintbrushes that come in the packs from the craft store, so nothing fancy. Again, all of the links to all the supplies that I'm using will be in that blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/watercolordeer. And so to finish off my page, I'm going to use a pencil to outline where I want my lettering to go. And then I'm going to use my Tombow Funosuke brush pen to write out, "As a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you." And then, "My soul thirsts for you." I meant to say, "My soul thirsts for God," as verse 2 says, but I got distracted because the babe started crying. So I actually wrote "you" instead of "God," but you get the same idea. So I used my Tombow Funosuke to do my brush lettering, and then I'm going to use a Uniball Signo gel pen to add some highlight to that lettering so that it pops a little bit more off the page. And I do have tutorials on how to do this brush lettering calligraphy, adding in the shadows. I have all those fun tutorials that you need, and again, that'll be in the blog post that goes along with this video, and you can head on over there to get the free deer traceable as well. So be sure to do that. It's in the description below. So that's about it for my page. I do want to show you the back side of my page because I always get asked. I did not prep my page with anything, and I hardly ever do, and I got no bleed through at all. A little bit of ghosting from my pen, but that's it. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. All right, have a great day. God bless.